The sun dipped lazily behind the suburban sprawl of Maplewood estates, painting the sky in hues of amber and rose. My front yard was a sanctuary, a tiny oasis where I could sip my morning coffee and listen to the birds bragging about the dawn. The mailbox stood at the edge of this sanctuary, an unassuming structure, sturdy and reliable. It had seen years of bills, postcards, and heartfelt letters, its metal skin weathered with a quiet dignity. It was just a mailbox. Until it wasn't. Karen, from 2 houses down, was as much a fixture of the neighborhood as the mailboxes lining the street. Her presence was like the scent of overbrewed coffee, pervasive and slightly acrid. She had taken it upon herself to be the arbiter of neighborly standards, wielding her authority like a plastic sword. Each time her SUV glided onto the street, tires crunching on gravel with self-importance, I felt the tension in the air sharpen. Today was no exception. From my porch, I watched her approach, clipboard in hand, determination in her stride. Her target was unmistakable. My mailbox. She circled it like a hawk, scanning for infractions invisible to all but her. A lurking grin tugged at her lips, a harbinger of the storm she intended to unleash. Though my profession demanded a certain adherence to patience and decorum, I felt the irony of the situation settle over me like an old, bemused friend. She scribbled something fervently, the pen scratching paper with the urgency of a proclamation. I imagined the words, non-compliant, eyesore, violation. Perhaps she believed that by policing mailboxes she was maintaining the integrity of our small universe. I saw it differently. It was a dance of shadows where authority masqueraded as concern. As the sun sank lower, her gaze flitted towards me, a challenge flaring in her eyes. I returned her look with casual curiosity, my exterior calm betraying nothing of the amusement stirring within. She marched towards my porch, the click of her heels a metronome of intent. I let her words wash over me. Something about the mailbox being too tall, too dull, too something. Her voice was a stream of self-righteousness, punctuated by the occasional pause as she awaited a reaction. I merely nodded, offering the placid smile of someone who had seen far worse. After all, I was a Federal Postal Inspector. My days were filled with the underbelly of mail fraud, not neighborhood squabbles. The irony was rich, delectable even, but I wore it lightly, like a well-tailored suit. Karen, in her fervor, was unaware of the chess game she had initiated. In the silence that followed her speech, the air hummed with expectation. She awaited capitulation or confrontation. I offered neither. Instead, I met her gaze, my own expression an enigmatic canvas. The game had just begun, and the board was set. My role, however, was not to play by her rules. It was to rewrite them. As she retreated, clipboard clutched like a trophy, I watched the shadows stretch across the lawn. The evening folded itself into night, and with it came the promise of an unfolding drama. Karen had set the stage, but the narrative was mine to craft. The mailbox, steadfast and unyielding, remained a silent witness to the skirmish. For now. The universe has a unique sense of humor, I mused, as I absorbed the latest development in Karen's crusade against my existence. It was not enough that she had summoned the police over a mailbox that was too close to the curb by an inch. Now, it seemed, her ambitions had expanded to encompass every conceivable aspect of my life within the confines of this HOA-governed suburbia. It began with the mailbox, yes, but I soon realized Karen was just warming up. Like a conductor orchestrating a symphony of suburban tyranny, she wielded the HOA rulebook with the fervor of a zealot. An anonymous letter arrived, conspicuously devoid of any fingerprints, save for the unmistakable scent of cheap perfume that permeated Karen's very being. Its contents were as predictable as the morning sun, a litany of violations, each more trivial than the last. Grass length, bin placement, even the color of my curtains. My existence, it seemed, was an affront to the order she sought to impose. Of course, the neighbors watched from behind their lace curtains, their whispers carried on the breeze like dandelion seeds. In the echo chamber of local gossip, the narrative twisted and turned, painting me alternately as a troublemaker and a martyr. Both images amused me, though the latter less so. I was neither. I was simply a weaver of justice, clad not in a postal uniform at this moment, but in the quiet fabric of patience. Karen's next move was to galvanize her allies, a small but vocal minority who reveled in the power they wielded over homeowners association minutiae. They followed her lead with a loyalty that bordered on the absurd, nodding in agreement at every baseless accusation she tossed into the wind. Like seagulls flocking to breadcrumbs, they gathered outside, casting furtive glances at my front door, their eyes alight with curiosity and something akin to fear. Inside, I leaned back in my chair, observing the spectacle from the vantage point of my bay window. A cup of coffee cooled in my hand, its warmth a comforting contrast to the chill of this unfolding drama. It was a peculiar feeling, being the focal point of such misplaced fervor. A Kafkaesque scenario played out in broad daylight. The irony, of course, was not lost on me. Here was Karen, oblivious to the full extent of my profession, wielding her rulebook like a sword, while I, a federal inspector with the authority to investigate postal crimes, watched her antics with the bemused detachment of a cat observing a mouse. My mailbox held secrets she couldn't fathom, layers of complexity concealed beneath its postal facade. It was not simply a receptacle for mail, but a symbol of a duty and a justice that transcended the petty squabbles of suburban life. For now, I allowed the charade to continue, my focus shifting momentarily to the sky, where clouds drifted lazily, unburdened by the weight of human folly. There was peace in the knowledge that the scales of justice would tip eventually, and when they did, it would not be with the grandiose clamor Karen anticipated, but with the quiet, assured precision of a well-placed stamp on an envelope, sealing her fate with an inevitable finality. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the neatly manicured lawns, I took a sip of my now cold coffee. The game continued, much like the steady march of time, each tick of the clock bringing me closer to the moment when I would reveal the truth to Karen. Until then, I remained the silent observer, patient and poised, ready to act when the time was right. In the cool shadow of twilight, I sat at my dining room table, a chaos of scattered notes and photographs before me, each piece of paper a memory, each photograph a silent witness. The past few days felt like an intricate dance, a waltz of absurdity and order, spun from the whimsy of a single woman who believed she could bend the world to her will with nothing but a stern look and a hastily dialed 911. Karen's voice still echoed in my ears, a grating symphony of self-righteous indignation. She had called the police over my mailbox. Of all things, to her, it was a symbol of discord, an affront to the meticulously manicured uniformity she held sacred. To me, it was a testament to resilience, a standing declaration against the tyranny of her petty rules. I had documented everything, a habit born of necessity in my line of work. As a Federal Postal Inspector, I was no stranger to detail. Each recorded word, each snapped photo was a thread in a web that I was weaving with patient precision. The irony was not lost on me. My occupation, a mystery to Karen, was the very shield against her orchestrated chaos. Her attempts to control the narrative were futile, mere gusts of wind against the sturdy walls of my resolve. And so I began crafting my counter, quietly, methodically, the way a spider weaves its web in the stillness of the night, waiting for the morning dew to reveal its intricate beauty. The neighborhood was silent now, houses slumbering under the watchful gaze of street lamps that lined the avenues like sentinels. My mind drifted back to the meeting at the community center, where Karen's voice had cut through the room. Her complaints were a cacophony of exaggerated grievances, her gestures punctuating her every word like exclamation points. Yet I had watched, silent, as others nodded along, caught in her current. But silence is never empty. It is the canvas upon which truth is painted. And so I prepared the brush strokes of my subtle counter. A report, meticulously crafted, lay before me. It was not an act of vengeance, but of justice. A balance to the scales she had tipped so precariously. As I stapled the final pages together, a memory surfaced. The look on Karen's face when she first saw the police car leave without action, her confidence wavering like a candle's flame in a storm. That image, more than any photograph, was burned into my mind. A reminder of the inevitable collapse of her paper kingdom. I knew she would not expect what was coming. How could she? In her world, appearances were everything. To her, the facade was the truth. But I knew better. The truth lay in the details, in the spaces between her words, in the whispers of those she claimed to represent. Tomorrow, I would deliver my findings, not with fanfare, but with simple inevitability. The HOA would review it, and in those hallowed halls of mundane power, the truth would unfurl, a quiet thunder rolling through the assembly. As the clock ticked towards midnight, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The tide was changing, a subtle shift in the air like the first hint of dawn on the horizon. The dance was nearing its end, and I was ready to take the final step. The wind outside rustled the leaves, nature's own subtle symphony, drowning the distant hum of the city. I stood, gathering the fruits of my labor, ready to turn the page on this chapter of absurdity. In the quiet of my home, I allowed myself a small smile. The irony was delicious, the justice poetic. Karen would learn that not all battles are visible, and not all victories are loud. Some are won in silence, under the cloak of night, in the quiet resolve of those who refuse to be bowed by the noise. The sun had barely begun to peek over the horizon, casting soft, warm hues across the neighborhood, when I decided to take my morning walk. There was something serene about these early hours, a quiet that wrapped around me like an old, comforting blanket. The air felt crisp, each breath a reminder of the fresh start that every dawn promised. As I strolled past the familiar rows of identical homes, I anticipated the day's events. The previous day had been a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and discreet meetings. Karen's overreach had lit a fire I couldn't ignore. It was time to illuminate her world with the truth she had been avoiding. The mailbox incident was just the beginning. Her obsession with control had turned our community into her personal chessboard, and she relished every move. But in her game, she had failed to notice that she was only a pawn, a small piece dwarfed by the grander mechanisms of the law. I knew this, and it was time to play my hand. My pace quickened as I approached the community center, a symbol of her reign. It stood defiantly, a monument to her imagined authority. I entered, my heart a steady drumbeat, feeling the weight of the documents in my satchel. They were my quiet companions, each page a testament to her transgressions. I placed the folder in the center of the meeting table, the quiet thud resonating through the empty room. It was filled with official letters, legal jargon, and the undeniable stamp of federal authority. This was my move, not flamboyant like Karen's public outbursts, but precise and calculated. The HOA board members would find it on Monday, their eyes widening at the official seals, the stark language delineating her overreaches. It was all laid bare. Her misuse of power, her harassment, her desperate clinging to rules that suited only her whims. She'd called 911 over a mailbox, but she had summoned something far more powerful. I lingered, imagining their faces as they absorbed the reality of the situation. The storm would come, not with thunder and lightning, but with the quiet inevitability of justice. I knew Karen would be there, her eyes simmering with disbelief, her mind scrambling to regain ground she never truly held. As I left the center, the morning light had shifted, its golden tones now sharper, more defined. I felt the change in the air, a tangible shift that mirrored my internal resolve. I continued my walk, passing her house. The curtains twitched, a sign of her vigilance, her ever-watchful eye. I almost smiled, imagining her reaction, the dawning comprehension of what she had set in motion. Her empire of paper rules and petty grievances crumbling silently under the weight of real law. The day unfolded around me, the neighborhood slowly coming to life, each sound, each motion, a part of a dance she no longer led. Her reign, built on bluster and intimidation, would soon be little more than a memory, and like the fading shadows of night, it would pass, leaving only the clear light of day. For once the world felt balanced, the scales tipped not by force but by the quiet, deliberate hand of truth. The morning broke with a quiet stillness, a peaceful canvas unspoiled by Karen's usual chaos. I stood at my window, the glass cool against my fingertips, and watched as a soft breeze carried the last of autumn's leaves across the street. The world was breathing. And for once it seemed to exhale rather than hold its breath in Karen's presence. In the days following the dramatic showdown over my mailbox, the neighborhood had found its rhythm again. Not the nervous cadence of residents dodging Karen's withering gaze, but a gentler, more cohesive beat, a community reclaiming itself. Karen had overplayed her hand when she dialed 911, summoning authority to my doorstep with an indignant fervor. Her complaint about my mailbox, a symbol of her relentless need for control, had ironically led to her own undoing. As a Federal Postal Inspector, the irony was not lost on me. She had unwittingly invited the very scrutiny she so expertly wielded against others. The investigation into her numerous infractions was swift and thorough. Her dubious dealings were laid bare. Falsified HOA citations, embezzled funds, and unauthorized surveillance. It was as if her entire empire of pettiness had been built on a foundation of sand, poised to collapse under the first serious wave of scrutiny. From my vantage point, I could see her house now, the curtains drawn tight as if to shield her from the reality she had crafted. Yet, even in her retreat, there was no solace. Her power had been diminished, and with it, the fear she had cast across the community. Neighbors began to re-emerge from their self-imposed exiles, casting uncertain glances at one another before tentatively waving, then speaking, then laughing. We rediscovered the art of conversation, the exchange of pleasantries without the cloud of Karen's disapproval hanging over us. I would be lying if I said I didn't feel a hint of satisfaction, a small triumph at seeing justice served in a manner both swift and poetic. But it wasn't happiness for her downfall that stirred within me. It was relief. Relief that our neighborhood had been granted a reprieve from the tyranny of one person's insecurities. Karen's empire of control had fallen, and with it, the walls between neighbors. Block parties resumed, gardens bloomed with a new vibrancy, and children played openly in the street, their laughter a testament to the restoration of peace. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself standing at the end of my driveway, the shadows lengthening around me. A neighbor approached, hesitating for a moment before offering a small, almost shy smile. "Looks like peace has returned," he said, his voice a low murmur that carried on the cooling air. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle comfortably. The neighborhood had exhaled, and in the quiet aftermath of Karen's reign, we had learned to breathe again, together. I turned back to my home, the mailbox standing proud and unassailable at its post, a symbol of resilience, of the quiet power that lies in standing firm, unwavering against the tides of pettiness. Karen's house remained dark, its windows like eyes closed in denial of the new world unfolding without her, a world she no longer controlled, a community reborn in her absence. Here, in this renewed neighborhood, we found a strength that Karen had never understood, the strength of unity, quiet and enduring, like the steady pulse of a collective heart.